Hello. This is my favorite web series that I watched in 2020. I know it was a very strange and hard year for a lot of people, so I was kind of surprised that I did end up watching 23 web series this year, which is around the same as I watched last year. So I watched 23 full web series and or seasons of web series, and then I also watched 3 bonus episodes. One was the Sam and Pat Are Depressed bonus episode, the Shipwrecked Comedy bonus episode that's called You Were Invited to a Zoom Meeting, and From Lockdown with Love, which is a bonus episode from Mansfield with Love, which I was really surprised to see because that show has not been posting content for a while. So these are the top 10 best web series that I watched in 2020. Once again, that does not mean that I didn't enjoy the other web series. These are just kind of the ones that I enjoyed the most. As always, this is not done in an order of best to worst. It is just 10 web series collectively that I enjoyed. This is my 3rd year in a row doing this, so I'm just going to jump right in. So the first one that I want to talk about that I really enjoyed is Represent. So I've already talked about this a little bit already, but this web series was probably one of the most enjoyable ones that I have seen in a while. I showed it to my sister and we both really enjoyed a lot of aspects to it. So this web series I have a full review for on my channel, but just in case you have not watched that, this series is about 2 best friends who decide that they're going to make a movie addressing a lot of the stereotypes that they have come up against in their filmmaking industry, very focused on feminism and self-expression. There were a lot of representations of very common tropes that you can see in many films. It did a really good job of establishing their individual characters and their goals. I really liked seeing how they built relationships with other people in the industry. Their main friendship really is very strong. It was a very funny and enjoyable web series to watch. So that's definitely one that I would recommend to anybody who is looking for a original series that maybe has a bit more realism to it in terms of people who experience misogyny or an intersection of misogyny and racism within the industry. Another web series that I really enjoyed this year was Wormholes. This is a very different web series than I'm used to watching. So with this web series, there was a whole bunch of different elements to it. This centers on 2 roommates in New York who happened to have a wormhole in their apartment. It was a very creative concept, and I really actually liked the combination of the slice for life and coming of age style plot along with the sci-fi or supernatural elements. It opened the door, so to speak, for a lot of random happenstances. I think that there was a lot of nuance that was maybe deeper layered within that web series, talking about that anxieties of trying to figure out who you want to be, what you're going to be doing with your life now that you are an adult and have to provide for yourself, your relationships with other people and how they're affected by your perceived level of success or failure. So it was actually a really deep web series that had a lot of really interesting, crazy comedy happening in the foreground, especially the last few episodes. So I was really excited to see something new and fresh and different that I haven't really experienced before in the many years that I've been watching. They did a lot of references to other styles of not just web series, but styles of media, which I also thought was pretty cool. One of the web series that took the pandemic as part of its inspiration that is still here. This is a web series from a group where I have watched and really enjoyed their work before, so I was excited to see that they were producing more content. I liked that it was kind of harkening back to vlog style and ensemble casts that were a lot more popular in the earlier days of web series when they first started to become popular, but it's still rooted in a very current topic where people who are experiencing the pandemic in a lot of cities in the United States are forced to stay home, to quarantine, to lock down, to limit their engagement with other people, how that puts a lot of strain on people's relationships and a lot of times affects their professional and academic engagements as well. So I liked that it kind of felt very nostalgic while still being very timely, and I really liked how all of the characters had their different personalities, their different things they were dealing with, how the relationships all kind of moved very fluidly and connected really interestingly across the spectrum of characters. Just a really nice cozy web series, I would say. It felt kind of like when you're sitting with a cup of tea on a stormy night type of web series, you know? It was very nice to watch and experience in that way. Another web series that I really enjoyed was actually made by somebody from the same program that I graduated from at JMU, was Hot Mess Confessions. So this is a very different web series than I typically watch. This is more slice of life episodic web series. It's almost a comedy sketch series where each episode is a very individual set of problems. They're very quick. It's extremely bingeable and pretty short, but I really enjoyed it because, I don't know, something about the comedy I felt like was just really clean and sharp. I think it definitely says a lot of good things if you're able to get characterization and establish relationships between characters within a very short amount of time. In my notes, I specifically wrote that it was a good use of entering a scene as late as possible and leaving as early as possible, which is something that my teachers when I was in school pushed really, really hard whenever you're doing script writing or screenplay writing. And I thought the editing was also really smooth, so it was just a very neat, clean series to watch. And so that's one of the reasons why it made it onto my top 10 this year. Another series that I really enjoyed, completely different, is The Best Wishes. This is a little bit more classic in that it is a literary based web series. It is vlog style. We have elements of a literary work that are being represented on screen or told to us by other characters, as in this is what has happened. So this one felt very classic to a lot of web series that I watched when I first started getting into web series. I've always enjoyed seeing how web series update a work by adding in different demographics and how that informs the characters in a way that's still authentic to the work but seems a lot more realistic and a lot more inclusive. But with this web series, I really enjoyed seeing the bringing in of bisexuality, asexuality, being Jewish, how all of that was included in the characters, and then specifically with a character who is made gay in the web series, how that is used to shift the conflict in a way that is still very relatable and really understandable in a more modern context. I think that the acting was very good, the filming was very good. It did feel to me very authentic, like I was seeing a window into a real person or a real group of people's lives. I have seen some web series where it feels very rehearsed and very acting, almost like a stage performance. So I think that they did that really, really well, and that's one of the main reasons why this made it into my top 10 this year, is it felt very authentic. It also did something that, again, I don't see super often, where it actually utilized how being asexual, gay, bisexual, how those actually affect your life and relationship in ways that are maybe not always positive. I think a lot of web series that do try to be inclusive will sometimes just ignore the reality of the world that we live in, being homophobic, biphobic, transphobic, ableist, all those different things. Racism, definitely. It seems to be a huge blind spot in a lot of web series. For me, I do enjoy, well, not necessarily enjoy, but I do appreciate when a series uses that aspects of people's identities, how that plays into the events of the work. Another literary based series that was based on a play that I actually have not read that made it into my top 10 this year was TWIncidents. I watched this one very early in the year. It did not come out this year. This was my first time watching it, and I really enjoyed it as well. It was really nice to see a series that is based on a Shakespeare work that I am not familiar with. Some Shakespeare works are done very commonly. Much Ado About Nothing is done quite a bit. Romeo and Juliet, I've seen several. So this one is based on a comedy of errors. I really liked that, again, they actually utilized the aspects of certain characters' race, their sexual orientation, the fact that they're adopted or in foster care, and informed that into the themes of the work and how they were creating conflicts. One of my favorite things about this series that I think they did really well was what actually happened when the twins meet. So twins who were separated at birth, one comes into the town where the other twin lives looking for her. Naturally, they are mistaken for each other. When the twins actually find each other, and I've done a full review for this as well that you can find on this channel, it's not perfect, and I think I really enjoyed seeing that because it does feel more realistic. When updating it, they actually showed the outcomes of what those updates are. Like several of the ones on this list, I'm realizing as I'm talking about this, TWIncidents, The Best Wishes, Still Here, they all feel very representative of the golden age of web series, so to speak. I did not coin that term, but I've heard it referred to that way. And everything is very blog style. It is literary based. A lot of it has that demographics that aren't typically seen in web series or in the works that the web series is based off of. So it feels very nostalgic, but I think that I have seen, at least this year, a lot of web series are doing it even better than in the golden age. When a lot of these web series are updating these works, it's not just making some characters members of the LGBTQ community. There is other forms of demographics that are being thought of, right? Variations in religion, in age, in gender, in race, in ability or disability, right? So I think it's being done even better nowadays, and I'm really excited to see what comes out in the next few years as the community in general challenge themselves more, do less heard of literary works, being even more inclusive, and then also using those life experiences and not just the label that goes with it. Another web series I watched closer to the beginning of the year that made it into my top 10 is called Hanging Out. So this is a Filipino web series. It's the first and only Filipino web series I have watched thus far. But with this web series, we have a group of gay men who are kind of exploring their friendships and relationships. I really liked the authenticity. We see a lot of the characters, how they individually approach their sexual orientation, the aspects of that orientation, like getting tested for HIV. Their languages are mixed, so mixing English with Tagalog and Spanish. You can tell that it was made for an audience representative of the characters. It wasn't made for example, white American bisexual people like me, but I still was able to enjoy it and connect with it. It was quick and bingeable, which I really tend to enjoy, and I do think that lately in the past few years I have started expanding the type of web series I watch to be less literary based. I've been watching a lot more original content, and also I feel that a lot of the content that I've been watching has covered some more to say adult themes. Not very many high school centered series. This year I also watched a lot more web series that talk more explicitly about relationships, expressions of sexuality. It's definitely been interesting to see how my top 10s kind of shifted between the last couple of years. So this year I only have 2 in my top 10 that are seasons as opposed to entire series. So the first one is Black Girl in a Big Dress Season 2. I previously had watched Season 1. I think that this is one of my favorites of this year. It's definitely in my top 3. I just really enjoyed it. It leveled up in so many ways. The cinematography leveled up, the humor, the timing of the humor, the editing leveled up. It was so enjoyable Season 1, but Season 2 I think just elevated itself. If you do not already know about this web series, a young Black woman who enjoys, it's not necessarily LARPing. She has this hobby of dressing up as though she is from the Victorian era. She does this in a community where she is one of very few people of color. She's trying to find her perfect person, but she has a very old-fashioned idea of romance. This season, it was fun to see her friendships and her relationships develop a little bit more. She seemed a little bit more confident. The comedy was just spot on. It's such a creative concept. It's not something that I feel like I can really compare to very many other series, if any at all. It is thoroughly enjoyable, and I enjoyed it once again seeing the new season this year. And the other web series season that made it into my top 10 was Gal Pal Season 3. The main reason that this one made it into my top 10 because I actually did not enjoy the first season at all. I think the third season made a lot of things clear and addressed a lot of things that I found very problematic in Season 1 and even in Season 2, and really capped off the series in a way that made it a lot more likable, made the characters a lot more likable and relatable. Problems that I had with Season 1 and the first half of Season 2 involved how the main character B makes very bad decisions, specifically in her hobby of catfishing straight women and trying to turn them, which is a very problematic stereotype amongst lesbians that they try to turn straight girls. Bisexuality was essentially treated as not a thing. That was something that in season 2 they address by having one of the girls that B has a relationship with and later breaks up with does end up identifying as bisexual. But I think in season 3 we really got to see all of the characters become real people and less just caricatures in order to push forward the plot. Dylan is one of those characters. We see her make some mistakes in season 3, but also see her kind of move on from a lot of the stress that she's carrying, the pressure to be in a relationship. We see B grow a lot. We don't necessarily see the characters completely resolve their issues, but we do see them start to at least acknowledge that some of their more harmful behavior comes from a place of pain and stress. There are still a lot of zany happenstances. That's just part of how the show does things, but I think that everything felt a lot more grounded this time. It felt like even if they were bad reasons to do certain things, they weren't justifiable reasons, at least the reasons were there. I really enjoyed how they developed certain friendships and relationships, and I think I also just give big points for not having B and Carter end up together, just because personally for me I would have felt really annoyed if everybody had been paired off. I think having B realize she was not ready for a relationship and she was still working through a lot of her self-esteem issues was a really great direction to go in, instead of to continue making her self-sabotage just so we could have more drama for the show. So I was very surprised this made it into my top 10, but season 3 actually saved the entire show for me, I would have to say. And then the final one that I have for my top 10 is another one that was largely inspired by the pandemic and the anxiety and stress and pressures therein, and that is Pizza Marbles and Secure Connection, also from a group where I have consumed and enjoyed a lot of their other works. The main character, her workplace, her friend group, everybody is connecting through Zoom. So once again, a very creative way to put a spin on the classic vlog style concept. It was a very cozy, easy to watch series. It was nice to see the relationships develop through that particular medium. Again, very timely and nostalgic at the same time. And I really liked seeing the varieties in the main characters' relationships with different people. There is a romance that blossoms over the course of the series, and that was just adorable to watch. It was a really good representation of how people can still be there for each other and still support one another, even though they're very limited. It was adorable. I think that going into the next year, I'm definitely going to be looking at some more creative concepts, looking at things that maybe I wouldn't have watched them immediately upon seeing it, but I'm going to give it a try instead of just sticking to what I know I already like. I'm definitely going to be looking for more series that have leads who are of diverse demographics, and it's not just the same faces and same life experiences that you see all of the time. And I think I'm also going to branch out a little bit more from YouTube and try to look at some more of other sites just to see if I can find something new in that aspect as well. So if you have any recommendations, or if you enjoyed any web series this year that made it into your top 10, let me know, because I would love to hear them. And I have links to all of the web series that I have mentioned below, so if any of them piqued your interest, if you want to see why they made it into my top 10, then definitely give them a watch.